What was the biggest change for you when you moved to Austria compared to your life in the US?
Well, I grew up in a city of 300,000. And a city like Anchorage isn't really a city. It's really just a spread out suburbia. And then I'm in a city of 2 million. And I found that to be the biggest shock living in a city, aside from the language and some cultural stuff. But for example, it's going to sound ridiculous, but I had never really taken the bus. I mean, I'd taken buses like as travel, but not like lived in a place where that was my transportation
Mm-hmm.
because Alaska doesn't really have a bus system. We barely have a road system, like this was one like shock that was very specific to me. Now, Vienna has lovely, lovely public transportation. So I had a really easy way to start, but like I think the first couple of weeks I didn't have a smartphone either. So I didn't have like Google Maps or anything. So I actually wouldn't get on the U-Bahn. I would only take buses and trams because I was scared of losing my orientation. And if I was on the bus, I could keep my orientation.
Yeah.
So for the first couple of weeks, I only took bus and tram, and this helped. But that's like a very specific to me thing that I just didn't have a lot of experience with. The other thing is that I think generally as you get further west in the US, people get more friendly and open. And this is really pronounced in Alaska. And I think it's because we're so remote. Like you chat to people in the grocery store, you stop and help someone along the side of the road, you talk to people. You do not do this in Vienna. You don't talk to strangers. You don't. Some of this is big city as well. Like in the countryside, like in Linz where we met, you do talk to strangers. But like this, I also found very jarring and very uncomfortable. And the way that maybe Americans or maybe Alaskans interact with other people tends to be a little gentler. And in Austria, it's very direct. I remember a study colleague told me right away, she was from Germany. She's like, oh, Americans are nice, but they don't mean it. I was like, that was really horrible. I was really offended by this. She's a really good friend. But like, this sort of
Otherwise, she's fine.
yeah, yeah. It was a bit of this like difference in communicating. So even my study colleagues all spoke English, but even when they spoke English, they spoke very directly. And I found this also very jarring. So these, I guess, were the biggest things: riding the bus, people not being friendly in the street, and my friends being very direct with me. So, but
I just it came to my mind. Imagine if you arrived to Germany instead of Austria.
oh my God.
If Austrian way was direct, I don't know what Germany would be for you.
I don't know. I have some very good German friends and we joke about this, how direct they are and how Americans use fluffy, exaggerated language. Yeah. I also have another example with a waiter in Vienna. I mean, this is like the classic example. Waiters in Vienna are rude. And the thing is, they're not really rude. They just like leave you in peace, And so, of course, I had read in my guidebooks, like, oh, you have to get the waiter's attention. They won't bring you the bill. And in the US, they don't leave you alone. They check on you. They bring you the bill. It's actually kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. I feel like there's a good spot in the middle. But I remember in the cafe seeing it, like, okay, I have to get their attention. But I was sitting there and I was by myself. This was again in this first month of stress. I was just like, but how? How do I get my attention? I'm not going to snap for a waiter, Do I call the name? Do I go up to them? Do I wave my hand? Do I make eye contact? And they'll avoid eye contact with you. So I sat there for a good 20 minutes, not really sure how to get their attention. And, it's these little things that.
What were some like everyday daily differences that you came across?
There are a couple things. One is the shops are closed on Sunday in Vienna, also grocery shops. And I came from the land of US 24/7, anything you want. So that was a bit of an adjustment. The other thing is that, it's different now, but back then, Vienna was very cash-based. Still in the countryside in Austria, it's still cash-based, but Vienna is much more you can pay with credit cards. In the US at the time, I could pay everything with a credit card. So I had to get used to making sure I had cash all the time. This was another.
Mm-hmm.
I remember also paying for my residence permit application. I had to have cash. I didn't have cash. Now I think you can pay with card too. But like at the time, this was 11 years ago. So, and the third thing that really got me that I didn't know before I came is Austria really pushed back on the no smoking indoors thing. smoking was allowed in bars and cafes and restaurants. And they technically had a smoking and a non-smoking section with like a glass partition and a door, and the door was always open. You go for even like a coffee and you come out and you smell completely like cigarettes. You go to a bar and you smell completely like cigarettes. And so this was a bit of an adjustment the first year. It was like, because I met a bunch of people. We were all exchange students. We went to bars quite often, and it was like, yeah, well, these are my cigarette clothes now, and this was a shock. I actually didn't expect that at all. I think it's still this way in Serbia, isn't it?
In Serbia, there is no non-smoking section,
Yeah.
basically, still. This
Okay.
is something that I get bothered by this more and more. And I actually notice that now when I want to meet my friends, it's even a really important parameter in my decision making. If we go to this place, how much smoke there is, if they have a good ventilation, or maybe we don't meet in a bar, but we meet at home, or this kind of stuff, because I get bothered by that more and more. Yes, this is this is interesting how at some point you realize the advantages of non-smoking areas.
Yeah.
No, but it's great, and it's great that there is no smoking anymore
Yes.
indoors.
No, it's completely different.
Yeah. So, and how do you find bureaucracy comparing to the US? Like more complicated or more straightforward?
I would say it's more complicated, but it's several things. First of all, in the US, you register to vote. That's it. You don't have to register your address. And if you don't want to register to vote, you don't have to. I mean, that's slowly changing, with some health insurance changes and stuff like this. Hopefully. Let's not get into that. And then, but so when I came, I had to like register, which everyone in Austria has to do. And then I also had to register for like health insurance. So it was a lot of bureaucracy, but they came with a lot of advantages, like health insurance. And then also there's a lot of bureaucracy just with being a foreigner. In general, I have found it relatively straightforward. It's a bit frustrating in Vienna to apply for residency because there's very long wait times and not everyone, it depends on who you get. So the first person I had was very lovely and very nice and helped me. Second person I got, the next time I had to renew it was less so. I don't know how else to put that. Less so. I know there's lots of positive stories, lots of terrible stories, but generally I think the bureaucracy is very manageable. And also more and more Vienna, the city of Vienna is providing information on these processes in English or in Turkish or in other languages as well. You see a lot of these websites that are targeted at foreigners are actually available in the languages the foreigners need.
That's
And
nice.
so I see that improving. In the countryside, when we lived in the countryside, it was, I don't know, I found it very easy, but that's just because there was just one person doing it and, she knew you and she knew your working place. It's doable, but it's definitely work. So I don't know. How did you find it?
Found it amazing because yes, for getting first residence is a lot, especially because I got a student visa, and as someone coming from outside of EU, it is a bit of the different and difficult documents that you need to provide, like solvency, and it's quite for someone coming from Southeast Europe. It's a lot of money. Also, which was also super difficult, like to have 1 year flat contract that fulfilling all the conditions they needed. But I love the way how this office in Shibes was organized because they were so relaxed. Like they were not really strict. If you say that I don't have this document, I will bring it next time I come here, and she would like really trust me that I would bring this document. And she would give me a permit and that I would get a card within a week. And this was amazing. And also, I think at that time, I think now that paperwork in Serbia is simplified. I mean, but again, what you said, like I am observing it from a perspective of someone who has the Serbian citizenship. I heard that actually also foreigners in Serbia have a lot of problems with bureaucracy. So I cannot really say about that. But at that time, even for people from Serbia, in Serbia, it was a lot of pain to get some documents and finish some administrative business. So I really love the way how it was organized in Lund. And apart from this first visa that had a whole list of documents needed, the rest was like when I was applying for this research visa or Rot Weiss Rot Plus card. it was much easier. And also the fact that in Shibes everything was done within 1 week. It was amazing. You apply in 1 week, you have your card. And this I would maybe give us advice to everyone who is thinking about Austria. Don't just look at Vienna because Austria is so much more than Vienna. Because, for example, for me, it was really funny that whoever in my like hometown heard that I live in Austria, they would ask how it's been life in Vienna, and I'm like I don't live in Vienna, and I never lived in Vienna. I lived in two different places in Austria. First in this small village in Lower Austria, and then in Monze, which is a small town in Upper Austria, close to Salzburg. But yes, and also in Vogtlabruck, which was the other place where I was getting residence permit close to Monze. It was also relatively easy and straightforward. I heard horror stories from Vienna where people are waiting for months to get their residence. The people are not really nice to them, yeah, the employees. So yeah, if you have options to go somewhere that is not Vienna, for sure the bureaucracy, at least in smaller towns, is going to be easier compared to Vienna.
I would completely agree with that. It's easier. I mean, I won't say it's not doable in Vienna. It is, but they just have way more pressure. So it's longer wait times. Also getting there, to get an appointment, you don't get an appointment, you have to go and wait. And I think it was, like I said, in Scheibs near where we lived, it was incredibly easy. In Vienna, it was a bit harder. And I think because the staff is so overwhelmed and presented with different difficulties, I think that results in them not being so nice. But it's doable. You just have to have a lot of documents.
Yeah, it's true.
I also did this in Sweden. I had to apply for a student residence permit. And I also want to caution people not to. Sweden is very strict as well. And do not enter Sweden until they've sent you your residence permit. Because I actually got kicked out of Sweden because I broke a rule. It resolved okay, but basically they require when you apply for a residence permit, you cannot enter the country. And my classes were starting, so I decided to enter the country anyway. And then I used my bank card there, and then they asked for my bank documents and saw that I used my bank card there. And basically I got the lovely letter saying, get out. So I booked a flight to the UK, which is outside of Schengen. So I got a passport stamp. I sent them the picture of the passport stamp. And then the next day they approved my visa. So I just want to caution people that can happen and to take these things kind of seriously, because I still had my Austrian residence permit, and US citizens get 90 days in Europe. So I was on those 90 days. I wasn't like illegally in Europe, but Sweden was very, very strict on that sort of thing. Meanwhile, I'm not sure Austria is quite so strict. So if you're thinking about moving abroad, don't try to sneak around the rules.
This is very strict. I mean, why couldn't you go back to Vienna? I mean, you live in Vienna. This is so strict.
Well, and after it happened, I heard that some people bought a plane ticket to somewhere else and just sent them a picture of the plane ticket. And that worked. But at the time, first of all, I was trying to do missing classes. It was like a Thursday when I got this card. I didn't get a lot of support from the university. They were like, well, you have to leave. And I'm like, okay, so how can I? So I booked a very expensive ticket to the UK and just did it that way. I think you could have gone to another country. You just need some proof that you weren't in Sweden. And I think this was in 2016. They had a lot of backlog from the 2015 immigration wave. So they were very behind. And I just didn't want to miss my classes. And I think they somehow understood that because they granted my visa the day after I sent them that I was in London. I think it was a very specific situation, but I just use this as a cautionary tale. Also, if something like this happens, ask questions, do what the letter says, but don't panic, because it ended up being okay. It was a very stressful 3 days, but it ended up being okay.
Yes, to relate to that, actually, I got my first residence in Austria while being in Austria. So they are not so strict. The only thing that they really checked is she opened my passport, and she really, because I had a thing that when I was in Austria first time in 2014, I registered to an address in Lunds am See, and they did not sign me out when I left. So the way how this office in Chives, police office in Chives, saw it is that I was there for 2 years. And this was illegal, of course, because I did not have a residence permit. And then I was trying to explain them. I even sent them a copy of an email where I'm informing the office in Lunds that I left Lunds and that I am asking them to sign me out from this address, and they did not do that. So then one thing that she really checked is that she took my passport and she checked all the stamps from the inside of EU. The moment she realized that I was not in the EU over 90 days, in like 6 months period, then everything was very smooth. The moment they realized that I was not in the country illegally or in the EU in general illegally at any point, then I really had no problem with getting the residence.
Of course, you can, I guess, always contact Dunya. But like on this subject, if you're thinking about moving to a country, there's usually Facebook pages discussing these topics. Now, I wouldn't take these as like every comment is 100% true. You have to do your research, but these can also be good resources to like find out your small questions, like will this document work for this requirement and stuff like this. And of course, it depends on who's processing, especially in Austria, who's processing your application. But don't be afraid to like, look through these Facebook pages for people who've done this, whatever country you're going to. That would be a recommendation. Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you see that someone is posting regularly and that someone is providing good advices in general, I think I would hold more to these advices than someone who is just randomly entering and you see that spends 15 days in the country, more partially as a part of the holidays and then giving advices. Then maybe no, but someone who you can really see that's been posting regularly and the solid advices, yes, definitely.
One of the times I renewed my student residence permit in Vienna, I had someone who was not so kind and forgiving. And you had to show your proof of where you got your proof of funds, basically proof of solvency that you have enough to supply yourself for the year, which is not a small amount. We're talking thousands of euros. And I was fortunate I had saved this from my job that I worked in Alaska. So I had the money in there, but that actually wasn't good enough. I had to prove where I got it. So I had to submit. He's like, well, first of all, he said, you need a letter from your dad that he gave you this money. And I was, of course, handled that super calmly and not at all irritated. But I had to actually like go dig up my pay stubs from my job that I had left 3 years ago to show them. And that wasn't on the website. That wasn't like something that I was on the list of documents that said I needed. But he said, I need this to approve your visa residence permit. So I had to go get it and give it to him, even though it was a lot and a little ridiculous. But, just you got to do what they say. Yeah.
Yes, this is one of the advices you will probably get from the other people, like on Facebook pages and stuff, that this can happen to you. Yes, that you be prepared for this. Even though, for example, from me, they did not ask it. But again, it's Lutz.
Well, and other times they didn't ask it. It was just this one guy. I think he was having a bad day because I walked in, he was arguing with someone else. This wasn't on the website. This didn't say it was required. You're trying to be a guest in the country. You just got to do what they say. So anyway.
Sure. Okay, so let's talk about your student life. We already started this with these stories, but yes, so you did your master's in Vienna, partially in Sweden.